Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very accomplished professional from Alberta, Canada, Dr. Amanda Brisebois. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Brisebois is a certified wellness, healthcare, and executive coach. She's a mediator, a dual certified as a general internal medicine and palliative medicine specialist. She's an author, and she's been recognized, felicitated, and awarded several times. So before we talk about wellness, healthcare, and coaching, tell me about what made you move from being a medical practitioner to a coach.
It's an interesting story, and a lot of people in my profession really do wonder what happened there. But I was a practitioner really solely focused on teaching students and my patients for probably around 14 years.
Right.
Very happy doing that. And I saw a big disconnect getting to know my patients. We were really focused on the medical things and the lab tests. And I thought, what can I do different? And that's when I actually went and trained to be a wellness coach at the Mayo Clinic. And how they asked questions and how they really got to know somebody changed my practice. So I thought, wow, this is fascinating. I had a better connection with them. But then I started doing leadership in the medical world, and I started having some struggles. In medicine, we're not really trained to be leaders. We're trained to be doctors. And started seeing gaps in my skills. So I started getting training and more training and finding out what was happening. And then I went into the pandemic as the medical director of a big hospital. And we had a lot of conflict. And I spent hours as a director listening to these people with conflict, and things didn't get solved. How can I be such a great communicator and not be able to help these folks? So I went back and trained not to become a mediator, but to learn. And in the process, I became a mediator because I did so many lessons and courses. And so I really started to think I can make a difference for people with a process of how we talk to each other. And so I went back to be a healthcare coach and an executive coach just to kind of fine tune those skills. And now that's really probably 75% of my practice is supporting people in our environments, talking to each other, getting through conflicts, how we manage our differences. And I can just see it making a big difference. So it's really morphed it.
What an incredible journey. Thank you for sharing it. So let's talk about your avatar as a coach. What are some of the main challenges executives face when it comes to maintaining their wellness and health?
Well, I know for myself and those around me, we don't tend to focus on ourselves. We focus on all the other people around us. And as we do that, and I still do that, even knowing better, we forget that we need to also do things for ourselves. But a lot of times we think about this resilience and eat better and exercise. And I really don't believe that's where we need to focus. I think we need to focus on sort of our efficiencies. And it really is around the wellness model that Stanford puts out on professional fulfillment is successes in your efficiency and also the culture around you. And so I think we really struggle to realize that, and that it's not really just all on us and how we manage our own personal lives, but how we help the people around us help us do a little bit of a better job and a more integrated job. And I think that's really what some of the challenges are, is changing that focus from how do we do this ourselves to how do we focus on those other things that really will make our careers and our workplaces better.
Well said. But, I've been in the corporate world all my life, and I think all my life, I've only attempted to strike a balance between professional responsibilities and personal well-being. I'd love to get your perspective.
I think we often talk about that balancing, you balance the work life. I don't think you can. I think it's more about integrating them. And I do think the more that you understand about your work environment, the better you'll be at home and the better you will be able to transition that. And I've really seen that with the mediator and the coaching stuff because I use it at home. And so, we'll be having an argument at home about something. And I think, wait a second, it's not really the issue who loaded the dishwasher that way. It's that we're both stressed.
Correct.
And so I think we have to integrate those things better. And that's how you get this proper marriage almost between the two, is that we start to learn that we can get supports at work, and we learn what that looks like, and we learn about relying on people at work and not always having to be the one who does it, and not always having to be perfect. In medicine, where you have to be perfect, you're a doctor, you can't make mistakes.
Right.
And so get around that. That also filters into your personal life, and I think that they then can move forward a little bit more effectively.
And the other thing that I wanted to ask you was the role of mental health. What does that play? What role does mental health play in the overall well-being of executives?
It's huge. I always say to my patients, like, our head is connected to our body. There's something that we think that mental health is different than the other physical health in your organs, but I really feel they're the same. You know, if you went and had a surgery, you'd never like pop into work the next day and say, oh, here I am. Your colleagues would cover you, you'd figure it out. But when you're really struggling mentally, we need to honor our brains in the same way as honor the rest of our bodies. Because if we're well mentally, then we really aren't well physically either. And I've seen it over and over how you can have severe physical symptoms, and it's due to really severe mental strife. And if you the mental part, the physical symptoms are just astronomically improved. So I think we have to realize we're connected, and that's the first step, and to honor all of those illnesses the same, really.
And what do you think are some of the common misconceptions a lot of people have when it comes to wellness and healthcare coaching?
Well, a lot of people I know don't know much about it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is people will think, well, coaching is kind of a fluffy profession that don't get much out of it. And the interesting thing is that we think coaches maybe are telling us what to do. It really doesn't have anything to do with that. It's helping people organize their thoughts. And it's the same with mediation and working through conflict. It's just helping someone organize what they think is important. What do they want to say? What do you want to do next? Where are the struggles? Where are the successes? How do you see your successes? So I think we just don't really know what a coach does. And I never really realized how effective it is until I had to borrow a coach to train, get coaching myself. And I thought, wow, this is a great way to just sit in front of someone for half an hour and spew out my thoughts and organize them a little better.
Correct. And, one of the two terms that I keep hearing very frequently now are burnout and work-related stress. I remember 4 decades ago, these things were not talked about so much. I'd love to get your perspective on what should entrepreneurs and professionals be doing when they're struggling with burnout and stress?
I think we have to talk to each other. And this is one of the big things that I've been trying to help people with, is how do we actually look at the person next to us and sit next to them? This whole Zoom thing, pandemic, I think has disconnected us. And so we don't have a team to kind of help us get through these things. And we've become less apt at talking to each other when we're disturbed about something. And I think that leads to more discomfort in your workplace, feeling that you're doing too much. You don't have a team around you to say, hey, so-and-so, I need help. I can't get this done. Maybe this is an area of expertise, not having the conversations about what expectations are. And also, I always say to people around me, find something that you really love. I think there's a lot of people that are doing things that they don't really enjoy, and that leads to burnout and stress, because you go to work and you feel that passion. And this is part of my journey, is how do you find something that you love to do every day, because it gives you energy. And instead of sucked out of you, you feel vibrant and you feel like you're doing something you enjoy. So I think the burnout and stress is really just almost being lost in our ability to connect and to figure out what we want to do and how we want to do it.
Well said. And how can executives leverage mindfulness and meditation to enhance their overall well-being and their performance?
Well, I hear meditation is great, but I'm not very good at it.
Okay.
So, and I do know a lot of people. In fact, one of my colleagues who I've been partners for years is a huge meditator. And so she sits there and she meditates, and it really drives her. I've never been able to find that quiet space myself, but mindfulness I'm very, very into. And mindfulness is similar yet very different, but it talks about really looking at the moment for what it is. I think this really leads to the burnout and stress if you can't do it. You know,
Correct.
someone says something to you that you sort of take aback. If you just sit there and say, well, what actually was that? What were the actual words? You know, what was the actual intent behind that? Usually that person's intent is actually good. We just get caught up in what we call a self-narrative. Keeps going round and around in our brains, and then we make up this great story that usually is quite tragic and difficult for us. So if we're very mindful about actually what happened, what really is the issue, why do we really care about this, I think it really helps us focus, enjoy life, and not make a big, huge story out of something that maybe is solvable quite easily. And I see it happen a lot. So just being really into the moment and thinking more about today than tomorrow. And yesterday doesn't help. I really try to gear people away from what happened yesterday, because it's usually not solvable to go that route.
Correct. And as someone said, you know, learn from yesterday, but don't keep looking back.
Yes, absolutely. Like, what were the lessons? What were the issues? I do that. I still do that a lot. Oh, I could have had that conversation a bit differently. And I'll actually write it down. What actually were the issues? And I said, oh, wow, I totally missed that because I got emotionally invested.
Yeah.
And so even with all this training, it's very easy to go sort of sideways for a day or 2 days. But if you're able to backtrack and say, oh, I'm just going to look at it and go differently, rather than I'm going to look at it and prove what happened or get into a debate with someone about what happened. That's usually not a productive route. And we do often get into that route, the debate of who was right or what happened, or who gets the right thing moving forward instead of working together. And I think that's where a lot of burnout comes to, is having to be in that debate position rather than in the dialogue position where you can talk to each other and move forward together.
Well said. And what role does nutrition play in overall wellness? And what are some of your dietary recommendations when it comes to handling your clients?
Well, it's funny because I don't really make a lot of those recommendations these days. So now my practice is based on palliative care. So I tell them, eat what they want, enjoy life. So it's very different. But, the nutrition for people is focused in that resilience pod that I was talking about. Eat better, exercise, get outside. And it's very focused on that it's our doing. And I do think we're very resilient people, though. So I tend not to focus on those things these days. Absolutely. I've just started to revamp my own diet. If you can eat well, I think we tend to feel better and feel that we can have a clearer mind, and our mind-body connection is better. But I tend to coach people these days on nutrition. I try to coach them on do that piece. You know what? There's some other very big pieces that are impacting you. And if we can become more efficient, if we can start working in more embrace culture that are inducive to working really, really well together, we may want to eat better. We may want to exercise because we don't come home completely in a funk that work was a terrible place. So I'm trying to focus on those other two pieces rather than, hey, you do better with yourself. I'm like, how do we do better together as a team? Because I think we've almost had the eat better, exercise more beaten out of us in a way. At least physicians have.
Correct. And your thoughts on the use of technology and digital solutions when it comes to wellness and health?
Well, I've actually done a lot of extra training in digital health because the healthcare field is really burgeoning in this area. I love it. I think health technology is amazing. I actually use those little apps and everything for my own health. I'll track what I'm eating when I'm on a good roll. But they also can be difficult because I do think they draw you away from people. And I'm really trying to focus people on knowing people around you and actually talking to people. So, hey, what are you doing today? How are you managing this? And those little things don't talk to you. And you have a coach on there with you sometimes, but I think we can lose part of ourselves by the technology. So speaking of balance, I think it is really important that we think technology is great. I love it. It's cool. It's fun. But you can get so focused on it that you miss what's happening around you. And then that can actually lead to more burnout and less wellness too. So I actually think it's something really important to say, when do I want to use that piece? And when do I want to just chat with the person who's making meals with me and say, hey, let's do this together to make something healthy and have fun while we're doing it.
Correct.
Rather than just sitting on my thing while we both eat separately.
Correct. So my next few questions now relate to your expertise as a mediator. And my first question is, conflict is often seen as negative or destructive. How can we change our perception of conflict and use it as an opportunity for positive change?
I think you have to have a positive experience. And I always have the mantra, turn conflict into successes, or even concerns rather than conflicts. Once you sort of work through a problem, and this is what I'll take people through, is what are the actual issues? Why do you care about them? Who are the stakeholders? Why do they care about them? Where do you have gaps in your knowledge? What are your goals? And you really work through this and you see, hey, this actually is a huge opportunity. And I've walked a lot of people through this where they've had something, they all were quitting their job. Like they were ready to quit, walk out the door. And all of a sudden they're like, wow, this actually isn't a big deal. And I know how to manage it next time differently. And once you start to see those shifts, that our differences really lead to our successes, especially in a business environment. Can you imagine having business with one brain around it? Sometimes you do have a brilliant brain that leads a lot of things. I can name some businesses, but they didn't get there without the people around them. Person in the room saying, well, what about this? And what about this? And so I used to drag people who had like mind in my meetings with me. I'm like, oh, they're not going to argue with me and they're not going to argue with me. And now when I have a meeting, I pick those people that I know are going to disagree with me, because they're going to have a very cool idea. It might be hard to work through. I might think, oh, I'm going up the wrong tree and maybe I'm not that smart or whatever it is, but always at the end, we come up with a better solution. So once you have success with that mindset and think, oh, so someone will say something to, I hate that idea. And I'll say, tell me more about that. Whereas before I might have been, well, that's stupid because it's a great idea. So now the more I ask these what, how, tell me about questions, whenever someone disagrees, I'm like, ooh, what does that mean? And they start to explain it. Like, actually, that's interesting. It might insert it to my idea. Maybe I have to take this little part away from mine and put yours. And so I think once they have a good experience and look at it that way, they'll start to say, cool. Yeah.
And do you see any similarities when you work as a mediator and as a coach?
It's quite different. They're very, very different. So a coach really stays out of making any suggestions, opinions. You're just asking the person, what are your next steps? What are you interested in? How do you see things? The mediator is really working with two parties to try to get them to talk to each other and try to lay things out. But they are very similar, that they're trying to help people draw out their ideas. Because both do that. Both sit there and say, what is important to you? What is your idea? What actually matters? What are your solutions? So neither are telling them what to do. Both are letting the players figure it out for themselves. And we're very smart people in this world. I mean, it's amazing what we can do. I think we just get trapped. So the two are very similar in that they draw out people's own ideas and their own ability to solve. And that gives you a lot of this self-efficacy, the ability to do it. And you think, wow, I did that little problem and I really excelled. I could do anything. You start to learn that you can do these things. So they're similar in that way, for sure.
Yeah. So I've got time for two more questions. And I wanted to ask you about your book. Tell me about your book or books.
Well, I just contributed to a chapter on chief medical officers, which is really interesting because this was a situation where I didn't get a job that I applied for, and they were writing this. I sent him an email and said, I got to tell you this story. So I told the story about how I didn't get the job. And it was the second chapter in the book.
Wow.
It really taught me that when you have a failure in your mind, I was really upset when I didn't get that, that you can actually drive yourself into this whole place of success. And I met so many amazing people through this chapter in this book and how we did it. So that was really amazing. I love doing that. And most of the other written contributions I've done have been chapters like that, how to work through conflict, how to talk to each other and really be able to look through to each other. I'm planning on writing a book on all of this, but of course I'm too busy talking to doctors one-on-one, so I haven't done it yet.
Good luck, and I look forward to hearing more about your book when it's ready. And my last question to you is, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation, based on your own amazing understanding of wellness and health and the fact that you coach so many people on this subject, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want a lot of our young viewers and listeners to take away?
I think the first thing is that we have a role in creating our own environment. I've seen a lot of things now where people will come and they'll be like, this person's doing this to me, and that person's terrible, and I'm being punished, and I have no role. I can't do anything. And this is something that we can do. We can make a difference with the smallest change in our words, having appreciative inquiry, we call it, where we ask open questions to people and really being interested in others. So that's the first one. You have a role. You can make a change. Even if you're in a toxic environment, people will see what you do. So that's really, really important. The second one is kind of the message I was sending about resilience. Don't be too hard on yourself with respect to eating well and exercising. Do it if you can, but focus on those culture around you. How do you change that? How do you make it better? And then also the efficiencies in your life. We are so drawn into all of these things we do, which I tell you, we probably don't have to do, and we probably don't have to do them the way we're doing them. Help the people, get the people around you. So the second one is don't be as hard on yourself and focus on the culture and the efficiencies. And the third one is don't do it alone. I'm really someone that likes to do things alone, fix things myself. If I'm not feeling, I've got to fix it. But I've learned that a lot of my burnout or feeling stressed comes from taking on too much. And there are brilliant people around me who love things that I hate. And I've learned that over the years. Number one, like Excel spreadsheets, I hate them. Someone beside me loves it. So find those people around you who love this stuff that you're not enjoying, and get them to help you, because it will make your life a lot better. So those are my 3 big ones.
Well said. And on that note, and your 3 wonderful lessons that, you can make a difference. We have a role in creating our own environment. Second, you said was, don't be hard on yourself. And the third one you said was, don't do it alone. Very powerful lessons, each one of them. Thank you for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for talking to me about so many different aspects of your role as a coach when it comes to wellness and healthcare. Thank you also for speaking to me about conflict. Thank you again.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It was great fun.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.